air conditioner just kicked on. What was I even saying? I don't remember. Hi y'all, welcome back to my channel. I hope you are doing well. Welcome to the September reading wrap-up. I overall feel like I had a pretty good reading month. A couple books stood out to me, a couple not so great books stood out to me. I did get out of a reading slump though, but then I got back into a reading slump and then I got back out of the reading slump. So it's been a little bit of a roller coaster of a month, but I'm excited to talk about the books that I read in the month of September. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. So the stats for this month were I read 8 books and had 1 DNF, so overall not too bad. I read 4 mystery, 3 romance, and then 1 fantasy/dystopian novel. And then my average star rating was I think about a 3.5, which isn't terrible, but I've definitely had better reading months. The first book I read was The Rom-Commers by Catherine Center. This one follows Emma and Charlie, who are both screenwriters. Charlie is a big-time Hollywood screenwriter. Emma is a little bit smaller, more independent film screenwriter. And Charlie is struggling to write a screenplay for a rom-com, which is totally out of his comfort zone. So Emma then gets hired to help Charlie rewrite the screenplay. And you can probably guess there's a little bit of romance that happens back and forth. Overall, I gave this one a 4.75 star. It wasn't quite a 5-star read for me, but it definitely was close. Spice scale, I gave it a 1 out of 5. While there is no on-a-page spice, there are definitely some references throughout, and the kissing scenes do get a little steamy, but again, it's pretty much closed door all the way through. And then for language, I did give it a 5 out of 5. There is a lot of language in this, which is pretty typical for a Catherine Center book, actually. So if you're a little bit more sensitive to language, then that might be an issue, but I personally wasn't super bothered by it. I really enjoyed the concept of this one and how much it hits on following your dreams, but also overcoming past trauma. Emma and Charlie's banter was really funny and actually made me laugh out loud quite a few times. Emma is definitely a spunky and determined girl, and Charlie is very much the grumpy, stubborn male main character, which I can kind of relate to a little bit. I can be pretty stubborn sometimes. There was one part at the ending that I kind of wished played out a little differently, and that's why it wasn't quite a 5-star for me, but overall I still really enjoyed it. Some content awareness is that there is a death of a parent in this book, as well as cancer, a traumatic brain injury. There is a gay side character as well, but it is only mentioned and not really important to the plot. So overall, definitely recommend. I'm gonna stick that up there. The next book I read is Loyally Luke by Pepper Basham. Overall, I gave this one a 3-star. There is no spice and no language. This one is technically the 3rd book in a series, and I didn't know that when I picked it up, but they can be read as standalone books, and it wasn't too hard to figure out and kind of piece together stuff that happened in the previous 2 books. This one follows Luke, who is a carpenter and does remodeling and flips houses for a living, and ends up getting a contract in this tiny village outside of a kingdom in, I think, Scotland. Some of the main characters have Scottish accents, which I think is kind of fun. Then it meets Ellie, who is actually the princess of the kingdom, but he doesn't know that on first meeting. He gets hired to do this remodeling project for an orphanage that's in this tiny town that, of course, Ellie is overseeing, so they then have to kind of work in close proximity together. I really enjoyed the first 200 pages of this book. I was giggling, eating up kind of the romance and the banter, but then once I realized that I was at 200 pages and we hadn't really had any major conflict just yet, I kind of started to lose interest, and it was a struggle to get through the last 150 pages or so. Definitely a slow burn romance, and the main conflict was really if the 2 characters would get together, and that was it. No other major conflict really going on. And so I kind of wish there was maybe like a little additional conflict so that there was something else that the characters were working towards. Overall, a cute read. It is actually a Christian fiction book. So if you're looking for maybe a more modern fairy tale romance kind of book, this one might be fun, but it just wasn't for me. Next, I read The Death Cure by James Dashner. This is the 3rd book in the Maze Runner series. I gave it a 3.25 star. I mostly listened to the audiobook. There is no spice in this one. In fact, actually, I don't even think there's a romance subplot at all in this book. For language, I did give it a 2 out of 5. While they don't usually use modern curse words, they do kind of have their own slang for some of the curse words, and so they use that a lot. So you get the idea of the words that they're using, but not quite. So that's why I kind of gave it a 2 out of 5 on the language scale. This one obviously follows Thomas and the gang as they are still trying to kind of overcome Wicked. They have escaped the maze, escaped some of the trials, and so they're just trying to take down Wicked, which is the organization that is claiming to be finding a cure for this disease that has taken over the world. But some of the experiments that they do is a little suspicious. So I've noticed that just in the original trilogy, a lot of the writing is just very choppy and straightforward without a lot of depth or description to them, especially with the characters. It's usually like, Thomas did this, and then he did that, and then he was feeling this way. It just made it a little bit harder to connect with the characters and what was happening in the story. I loved the movies, but I just don't think the books are really for me. Overall, not a bad read, but I probably wouldn't really reread this for a while. Some content awareness though in this one is that it does deal with disease and death, as well as some pretty traumatic and descriptive injuries that the characters withstand. It is a YA book, so there's not too much stuff in it, but figured I'd let you know. And then my one DNF of the month was 9 Lives by Peter Swanson. I read about 80 pages of this and then quickly realized this book was not for me. So I gave it a 1 star, obviously. On the spice scale, I gave it a 2.5. And then I honestly don't remember if there was much language in the first 80 pages I read, so I couldn't really tell you on that one. I think my issue with this one is that even in the first 80 pages, there's like 3 characters that are cheating on their spouses or significant others. And that is just something that doesn't appeal to me. There also was a lot of descriptive references to male reproductive parts, and I didn't really appreciate or like the type of mindset that put me in. Overall, just wasn't really enjoying this one. This one took inspiration from the Agatha Christie book, and then there were none. So it follows 9 different characters who all receive a list with their name on it. Most of them think nothing of it, but then one by one people on that list start dying off. So then a detective has to come in and figure out the connection between all 9 people, why those 9 people specifically are being killed off. Each chapter does follow a different character's perspective, so that did get a little confusing to me. I did look up the ending for this one and was confused by the ending. I think because it was hard to keep all of the characters straight, I didn't really understand it. So maybe I'll try another book by this author, but overall this one just wasn't for me. And then I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which this one got me out of a reading slump, so I'm so grateful for that. I gave it a 5 star. There is no spice in this one. As far as language, I did give it a 4 out of 5. Even though it is YA, there is still quite a bit of language in this one. This one follows Pip, who is digging into a case that happened in her small town 5 years ago as part of her senior capstone project. It was thought the case was closed, but then Pip was always a little bit suspicious, and so she decided to kind of revisit some stuff, talk to some people, figure out what's going on, and she figures out some juicy details. Yeah, for sure. I enjoyed this one so much that I even stayed up till like 1 a.m. to finish it, and the plot twist at the end had my jaw on the floor. I really enjoyed the format of this one because it included some transcripts and interviews and journal entries that Pip was typing on her computer, so you got just a little sneak peek inside her brain and what she was thinking and what her thought process was like, so that one was really enjoyable. There is a tiny little bit of romance in this one, and I really enjoyed that. Love Ravi and his character and his relationship with Pip as well. Some content awareness is this one does touch on subjects like suicide, murder, SA, the R word, substance abuse. There is also a queer side character who is bisexual, but it's only mentioned and not really significant to the plot either. So really enjoyed this one, highly recommend. After reading that one, I got back onto a reading high, and so I was excited to pick up this book by Alice Feeney. This is His and Hers, and this book came out in 2020, so it's a couple years old. I was working my way through Alice Feeney's backlog a little bit. This one leans very heavily on the thriller side, which I'm realizing is not my cup of tea. I usually enjoy just a good murder mystery, not so much the thriller psychological stuff, which is what this one hits on. Overall, I gave it a 3-star, and then I gave it a 3 out of 5 on the spice scale. There are some descriptive references as well as a couple brief open door scenes. Not too much description, but you kind of get the overall idea of what is happening. And then I did give it a 5 out of 5 on the language. There is a lot of language in this book. Some of the stuff that happened in this book made me a little uncomfy. It left me feeling kind of dark and a little disturbed by some of the stuff that happened in this book. I usually read at night, and I could not go to sleep after reading this book. So that's how kind of creepy it was. The plot twist at the end, though, was really good. I did actually guess who the murderer was at the end of the book, which usually I don't do, so I was a little proud of myself about that one. Not gonna lie. It was a little slow to get into, just because it's building up that story, and I think that's what put me in the reading slump, is that it didn't really catch my attention right away. It was very slow, but then like the last 150 pages were insane. Like, I flew through those. Some content awareness for this one is it does deal with murder as well as substance abuse, SA, R-word, suicide, and also some very graphic descriptions as far as like the actual murders themselves and what happens with the victims. So normally I'm a huge fan of Alice Feeney, but this one was just not it for me. So I was a little disappointed by that. And then to wrap up my mysteries, I did Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie. This is my first Agatha Christie book that I ever read, and I actually audiobooked most of it because the actor that plays the main detective in the movies narrated this audiobook, and he actually did a really good job. There's a lot of characters in this book, and he did a different voice for every single one, so that was really impressive. This one does take a little bit to get into, but I did appreciate the backstory and the buildup of the story. You kind of got an idea of each individual character, again, because there are a lot of them, and they all have different relationships with each other. I have seen the movie, and so I kind of remembered what happened at the end, but there was a little twist within like the last 10 pages that I was not expecting, so that one got me good. This book follows Hercule Poirot as he is on a vacation holiday in Egypt. He boards a steamboat that is going down the Nile River, so he's interacting with like all of these other passengers, and then an accident happens and one of the passengers ends up dead. And so he no longer is on vacation and has to work and figure out who on the steamboat was the murderer and why, as well as trying to solve the mystery before they are finished on this vacation and tour of Egypt. Overall, I gave this one a 4-star. There is no spice and no heavy language. Some of the language definitely has aged a little bit. Some of the words that they used back then have a different meaning now. So I kind of had to do a little bit of a double take whenever I would hear one of those, but overall not too terrible of language. Some content awareness is this does deal with death and murder as well as alcohol use, so really enjoyed that one. And then I did read an ebook on Kindle, and that was Just Don't Fall by Emma St. Clair. This is actually part of a 7-book series. They are all closed door, all spice-free, not a lot of language, and it actually was a bundle that I got on Kindle were all 7 books for $7. So of course I had to jump on that deal. So this is the first one in the series. This one was really cute. I started reading this one after reading His and Hers by Alice Feeney, because again, that one left me kind of in a dark mindset. It didn't really make me feel good after reading it, and so I wanted to pick up a cute fluffy romance to keep my spirits up, and this was exactly what I needed. This is a hockey romance, and it is the first hockey romance that I have ever read, so that was a lot of fun. definitely has a lot of tropes. It has childhood friends to lovers, fake dating, kind of a slow burn romance, takes place in a small town, hockey romance. It was really cute and I loved Parker. She is definitely a spunky gal and I really loved her dynamic with Logan as well. I rated it a 4-star and like I said, there is no spice or no bad language either. So definitely a cute and perfect read for fall. And then the last book I did was The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. I listened to this one on audiobook. This one was a really fun concept and just overall a really fun read. I wasn't super wowed by it, but I would still definitely recommend. I gave it a 4.25 star. I did give it a 1 out of 5 on the spice scale. Again, no open door scenes, they're closed door, just kissing, but there definitely is a couple references throughout and it gets a little steamy at one point, so. And then for language, I did give it a 4 out of 5. Again, Catherine Center tends to have a little bit stronger language in her books, but I didn't notice too many in this one, actually. There is a little twist at the end that I was not expecting, and that one kind of left me on the edge of my seat a little bit. Overall, not my favorite Catherine Center book, but I would still really recommend. It's really cute, it's wholesome, it touches on subjects like overcoming grief, especially since our main character is trying to move on from the death of her mother that she wasn't really close to, but was kind of really the only family that she had. Jack was also really funny and a sweetheart. Even though he is a movie star in this book, I feel like he wasn't your typical Hollywood star, and he was just a lot of fun. And those are all the books that I read in September. Again, overall, not too bad of a reading month. I'm optimistic for October, and I'm actually excited to start reading some more books, especially make a dent into my physical TBR. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, as well as check out my Instagram. I post bookish content over there as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!